All right, welcome back to the sessions. This will be our sixth episode of this quarantine, even though we're starting to come out of quarantine here. But I'm going to keep doing this because it's fun and I get to hang out with all the awesome people in my life. And we got a return guest here. Franco was on here, it's one of the early days now.
Yeah.
I don't know. How long ago was that now? I'd say 2 years.
Year and a half, 2 years ago at least.
Yeah. Well, welcome back. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you. All this has gone down. How you been?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to see you. It's been a while. It's been strange. I hate not seeing all the, friends and family. It's kind of a drag, but no, life is good. All is well. How are you guys?
Hanging in there. We're actually about to head back up to Oregon. It's funny, when this all happened, I was in Oregon with Jose. It was just nuts to see it going on. Up there, we're still not as locked down as it was in California when I was up there. So we kind of just got to see it all unfold. And then be on the road back down was a trip.
I would love to. I'd love to talk, because I've been curious on that too. Of what it's like in other areas, especially other states.
Yeah. I have friends in multiple different states. Like, I have a buddy who just moved to Florida, and he says it's pretty back to business there.
Wide open.
Yeah, except that the restaurants are doing the social distancing. But other than that, he said they're different out there.
Yeah, that's just Florida doing Florida stuff.
Yeah.
How Florida gets down.
You've been working throughout all this, right?
Yeah, no days off. We're deemed an essential first responder business. So we do disaster relief, bio cleanings, restoration, construction, restoration in general. So yeah, we're a first responder disaster relief company, essential business. So we've been going full throttle, no breaks, no stopping. Business hasn't slowed down. Business has just shifted.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're still getting at it.
So talk to me a little bit about that, how shift. I know you were telling me that you had to do cleanup for some of these protests and riots going on.
Yeah. So well, with the COVID stuff, we since we do bio cleanings anyways, we switched gears quickly into the COVID cleanings. Following
hospitals and stuff.
Let's say that again.
You were at the hospitals and stuff, or what do you mean?
Some hospitals, large, I don't know if I should name them, large chain stores,
okay.
Large food stores, restaurants, all of them. Yeah. We do a lot of preventative. People are concerned that they could have been, had a known exposure. So we'll go in there and do a full bio cleaning on it using, the CDC guidelines and CDC, the cleaning tools. I can't remember what they're called right now. Cleaning solutions, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
And then we went from that straight to, that Saturday morning. The protest started on Friday night. It's been a couple weeks now, I think. Probably 3 weeks ago, I think.
3 weeks, yeah.
And then we started getting calls from some of our large clients, our large corporate clients, Saturday morning, mid-morning, to do preventative board ups, as we call them. So, basically just board up all the windows and doors, make the buildings secure. Some of them were in anticipation of rioting and looting. Some of them they'd already been broken and busted and ransacked. So we just went to secure them for, the duration of the repairs.
Wow.
It's crazy. Nuts, man. We started Saturday, 9-10 a.m. I had crews getting home. I guess it would have been Sunday morning, 3-4 in the morning. We were back at it Sunday. I think I was back at the office Sunday, 8 a.m. I think I got home at midnight Saturday night, back at the office first thing Sunday morning. We went all the way through Wednesday, 14, 16 hours a day.
So is it widespread all over, or is it just traded areas that you guys had to work?
Everywhere from Santa Rosa through San Jose.
Wow.
Salinas, Watsonville, everywhere.
So it was pretty bad in San Jose, I hear. Huh?
San Jose was nuts. Oakland, yeah. I mean, there was some really hard hit areas.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. You're all over the Bay Area.
Crazy, yeah.
Well, yeah, man, it's been crazy times for sure. With how about Raquel? I guess she's been working throughout all this as well.
Yeah, it's just business as usual for them. Nothing changes.
Have
So
they had to deal with different responses because of this, or?
yeah, yes, and one of the things, yeah, yes, they have. Yeah, I'll just say yes, they have.
Yeah.
I don't know how. Yeah, they have. I can say this. I haven't seen her a whole ton since that
Yeah.
started. There has been a lot of time off for her.
Both of you then, huh?
Crazy, yeah.
And the kids are home.
They're home sometimes with family, other times. Depends on my work schedule, her work schedule. If I'm out in the morning, then they'll go to my in-laws, the family's house.
Now, did Mieko, did she graduate this year?
No, she finished
Oh,
10th grade, going into her junior year. So we just found out yesterday she made varsity cheerleading for the second year.
all right.
Yeah, she got great grades, 3.0, fantastic. She did good. Eva, always great grades. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, they just keep growing. Eva's getting so big now.
Dude, it's insane. It's nuts. And then Miyako unfortunately for her, turned 16 during the shutdown, so she can't get her driver's license yet.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, that's all right. She needs to.
I'm all right with it.
With that.
I'm cool with it. We get a couple more months of.
Did you hear about some of the states that were allowing the kids to get the driver's license without
the online test?
That's crazy.
Bro,
I don't know about that one.
I'm not feeling real good about that one. I'm glad California is not one of those states.
I mean, it's already dangerous enough that you're putting teenagers behind the wheel, but then without an actual test.
Yeah, without anyone actually. Yeah, I think the driving test is great. I don't know how much to actually learn or whatever, but you learn how to drive under pressure.
Yeah.
If you're going to handle that while you're nervous and what moves you're going to make. Are you going to look left? Which basically you're putting these children into a 2-ton death machine with an absolute world of distractions that weren't there when I was 16. I mean, really, I think when I was 16, our biggest distraction was changing the cassette in the cassette player, or finding a new cassette you wanted to put in.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's insane. It's madness.
Crazy times, man.
Yeah.
Let's talk about actually the UFC and all the things going on with the contracts with these.
Jesus Christ.
Think about all this. What I find interesting is that Leslie Smith was talking about all this
Union and yeah.
And now it's funny how these big fighters are talking about it with this pandemic going on, but it's interesting it's coming up now.
Well, Leslie Smith she saw this 3 years ago, 4 years, maybe. I don't even know. It's been a yeah. And then of course no one stood with her because everyone was getting their piece of the pie. But what happened, in my opinion, if you look at the business structure of the UFC, a lot of the fighters are grossly underpaid, but a lot of them were getting broke off with pay-per-view percentages, pay-per-view buys, those things. And those numbers aren't public because the UFC is a privately owned company, but there was websites that could kind of figure out. Dave Meltzer was a big one, the Wrestling Observer. He could always kind of figure out what their pay-per-view buys were. And so people kind of had an idea of what these guys were getting on the bonus end of things. But when she signed that deal with ESPN, they get, I could be wrong. I believe it's ESPN pays them $750 million a year to put on a certain amount of cards. I think it's 48 cards a year. and they're on the ESPN pay-per-view or on ESPN themselves. No more private pay-per-view on like DirecTV and those things.
Yeah.
So the UFC is getting their money regardless.
Yeah.
So they don't care about pay-per-view buys and those things anymore. The fighters don't know how many pay-per-view buys and things are there anymore. And now only a select few are really getting broke off those kind of quote unquote pay-per-view bonuses. That's going to be Conor, John Jones, it's a very select. I can't even think of the top guys right now. But it's going to be a very select few of them. So
well, it's interesting that it was John Jones who's complaining about his contract, and then of course what's his name? One who fought Nate. I'm blanking right now.
Conor.
No.
Oh, Masvidal.
Masvidal.
Yeah. So what happens? Well, John Jones, the move for him was going to heavyweight to fight Francis Ngannou. And that's a blockbuster, spectacular fight. I'm not a John Jones fan. I swear to you right now, I'll pay that 74 freaking 99. I don't give a rat's ass what they charge. I will buy that pay-per-view right now if they said it, But John Jones wanted heavyweight money.
Yeah.
Because once you go up, you're not coming back down. John Jones isn't going to go up to 240 and fight these guys. It's like DC. Daniel Cormier is not coming back down to light heavyweight. You get used to not having to cut that weight and shed that weight. You got to you got to build your frame up with muscle, or in DC's case, not always muscle. But you're not coming back down. So John Jones wanted heavyweight money. So you're talking probably $10 million to fight Ngannou.
Flat. Do they get paid that much?
No, that's why he's not getting paid that much. So
I've never heard of a UFC fighter making that much.
No, not flat rate, not even Conor. I think as high as ever flat rate was $3 million to show. And then he got all the back end bonuses. He probably made, he's made hundreds of millions. But then you have the case of George Masvidal. So when you fight for a title in the UFC, I believe, or you're the champion in the UFC, your pay structure is based off of that.
Yeah.
If you're no longer champion, your pay structure goes back to your original contract.
Okay.
So champions get $500,000 to show. You lose that belt, your original contract's for $50,000 and $50,000. You go back down to $50,000 and $50,000. You don't stay up there anymore.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know it's interesting that they said they're trying to. I was listening a little bit to what Masvidal was saying, and he was making the point that he didn't. It was different before this because you could get a bunch of fights, but now that they've had to cut back on fights, and he's realizing he's only getting 20% of, what the payout is, and he did mention that there's no pay-per-view. Or the attendance. I mean,
yeah.
I was under the impression they never got anything for the attendance.
Not that I've ever heard of. I don't think they get attendance points per se on bonuses, but I would venture a guess that it's hurting the UFC's pocketbook.
That's what it is.
With no gate, no concessions, no nothing. So why are they going to pay more? They're getting their money from ESPN. As long as they put on X amount of fights, they're getting their, $750 million or whatever their deal is with ESPN. So they've got to, what was the number? I heard it the other day. I think they have to put on 3 fight cards a month, or maybe 4 fight cards a month for the rest of the year to make their quota with ESPN to get paid.
That's crazy.
So they're just throwing cards.
That's why I had to make Fight Island.
Yeah. That goes live July 11th, I think they said.
That's going to be interesting in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, out in the Emirates. But they had to do that for the international fighters because you're not flying into the U.S. or anywhere right now with all the restrictions. So they had to go somewhere where they don't give a shit. That would be up.
They care about the money.
Yeah. So, yeah, interesting time. I mean, it's funny, the trickle effect of this whole shelter in place and and COVID thing is had on not just you and I and, you know what I mean, and our neighbors and our communities, but I mean, worldwide. Athletics, sports, it's crazy. Even golf now. They had a golf tournament on this weekend. No attendance, no one there.
Yeah.
You know, they mic'd up the players, which is odd, but yeah, man, can't do it. And then they've had some charity golf things. They couldn't even have their caddies there.
Really?
So yeah, it's just the players. They let them ride in carts because no one was carrying the bag for them. But yeah, man, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning played in one with Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson. It was pretty entertaining, but yeah, it was very restricted. So it's affected everything. The ripple effect of this is monumentous.
Yeah. I think it's really exposed how brittle our economies are, and how, like, we have this idea that everything's held together, so strong, but something like this shows that things are very held together on a thin thread. It seems like, it's like we get comfortable.
Everyone is very fat and happy. Everyone's very, yeah. Luckily, I believe that we're all very spoiled with money and technology and those things nowadays. And you've seen how fast that can be taken away from a large chunk of people. I mean, unemployment went from what, under 3% to 30% almost overnight.
That was insane.
I mean, that's I think larger than the Great Depression.
Oh, by far. I think at the height of the Great Depression, it got to maybe 23, 24% unemployment. Yeah. And yeah, this was just within a month, complete 30%.
Yeah.
It's got the Great Depression, because that's what I was actually watching a great lecture on that all day today. And I'm fascinated with the similarities and parallels in history between this time and the Great Depression. And I think everyone who wants to know the signs of what's going on right now should be studying the Great Depression right now, because there's so many similarities, and it's very eye-opening as to what's going on and why it's happening the way that it does. I was fascinated with, in the 1920s, Herbert Hoover was the president.
Mm-hmm.
Herbert Hoover was like an administrator. He was known for, he actually was the head of the food administration for the US, and he was known to have basically fed a lot of parts of the world, especially Russia at the time. There was like over 2 million people starving there at one point. He was so good at organizing things that he helped organize food deliveries to Russia at that time. So he was a big time humanitarian, and then he got elected president. And within a year, I think, after he got elected, in the Great Depression totally sunk his ship.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is, after World War One, the Allies made Germany pay for reparations, war reparations, to all the countries that won, basically, that war. And Germany, before the war, had a strong steel and coal industry. And they provided coal for a lot of countries, but especially France. And France had a big steel industry. So after World War One, Germany was paying out pretty much all their money that they were making from coal for these reparations. Well, they realized, like, this was a lose-lose situation for them, so they stopped providing coal to France. Well, France didn't like that, so they went in there and they occupied their coal mines and stuff. And so they had to make this a pact called the Dawes Plan. And it was Herbert Hoover who sent in his guys to help draft this plan, which was basically the U.S. was going to loan I think it was $500 million to Germany to help them kickstart their industry so that they could pay these war reparations. Little did we know that and it was J.P. Morgan that ended up giving a lot of these loans to Germany. Well, Germany kickstarted their armament program with these loans. And that's actually what helped the Nazi party rise to power. And so it's fascinating that we think that it's the stock market crash that ended up, starting the Great Depression. But what it was the US giving all these loans to these foreign countries and the Nazi party in particular, and financing that. That later came back to bite them in the butt when the Great Depression hit. And the only thing that stopped the Great Depression was World War II.
Yep.
So,
yeah. So basically, we funded World War II.
It's nuts. It's nuts when you realize how intricate economies work. And it's not, history has a way of changing things. People get caught up. The New Deal is what we all were taught was what saved America. And what's interesting is a lot of the New Deal principles were Herbert Hoover's ideas.
But also, history has a slick way of repeating itself too.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And when you don't learn from history is when you make the ultimate mistakes. I mean, to bring it closer to our times, I guess my time, so I'm a little bit older, a great example of that would be the Taliban.
Yeah.
We funded, we created, we trained the Mujahideen and the Taliban to beat the Soviets when they tried to invade Afghanistan. And then
weapons.
Yeah. And then of course that turns around and bites us right in the ass too.
Yeah. Yeah, the US has a rough history of foreign policy that just doesn't work, and it actually creates a lot of issues.
But yet we keep, cut, copy, paste, I guess.
Well, like we're saying, like history does repeat itself, but it's because we don't know our history.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's so important to understand history and really diagnose it and analyze it before, trying to make.
I don't think our population as a whole knows enough about our history, myself included, because there's a lot left out in the education side of history, because not everyone wants to open all the books because dirty, bloody, muddy history. But when you're talking large scheme politics, I believe that if they don't know it, they have very smart people around them that know it. The problem with the world isn't that the politicians don't know or learn from the history. It's that big business runs the world. It doesn't matter. History is not going to how do I say that? They're not going to allow history to detract them from making billions. Most companies don't. I mean, you look at the grand scheme of things in big business, even small business, people will cut off their nose to spite their face. They could make a buck. I mean, and you see small businesses make these mistakes time and time and time again. You see large businesses make these mistakes all the time. The difference is that large businesses tend to get bailed out because of the friends that they have and the arrangements that have been made. So, of course, they're not going to learn from history.
Yeah.
You tell your kid the stove's hot. You can tell them until you're blue in the face. Most of them are going to have to reach up and burn their hand.
Mm-hmm.
But if a kid reached up, touched the stove and burned their hand and there was no pain involved, they touch that stove once a week. Or twice a week until something hurts. No change will ever come until something hurts. And if we keep bailing these big businesses out, we're going to keep, and it doesn't hurt them.
No.
So we're going to keep making these same repetitive mistakes in the world, because really the world is just a business. Government is just business. Politics are just business. But if it doesn't hurt anyone, we're just going to keep doing it over and over and over and over again. Really where we're at today. My opinion.
No, I absolutely agree. And you look at how many recessions and depressions we've had, like we always go back to the Great Depression, but there's been recessions and depressions almost every decade.
Freaking 2008.
Yeah, exactly.
That's 12 years ago. And before this COVID stuff hit, we were trending to go back to a massive recession. Just look at housing cost went exponentially. You know, there's again, we're back to freaking apartments in San Francisco for a 1-bedroom, shared kitchen, shared bathroom, freaking apartment, if you want to call it that, at, you know, like $1,500, $2,000 a month. That's where we were back in 2006, 7, and 8 before the whole bottom fell out. But yet,
I've heard about this too, that housing prices in the Bay Area have not been affected by this COVID. Like, it seems like the prices are actually rising, which should make no sense based on economic, you know, philosophy.
It makes no economic sense, but still happening.
And that's I think the most frustrating part about going to this idea of trickle down economics, where, you know, like the invisible hand of the market, where the market will correct itself. There's too many forces at play, mainly probably big business being able to control the market, and you see that with the stock market, how throughout all this it's been, how has the stock market gone up despite the economy collapsing, you know? And that,
I'm not huge in the stock market. I don't understand it.
I'm not either,
because I've never dove into it, and I could be wrong on this, but I believe I'm correct. Obviously, when the shelter in place, I think it was March 17th or March 18th, hit, the stock market obviously went down. I know that because 401ks took a major dump.
Yeah, it did go down.
Yeah, I believe I heard, and I could be wrong, man, but I believe I heard when the rioting, not the protest rioting, two very separate things. But when the rioting and things started, the stock market went up.
Interesting.
I believe. I can't, I could be 100% wrong, but I think I heard that.
But my point being is that the stock market is speculative in nature. Mm-hmm. And so when we have our economies running off of essential gambling at the highest degree, that's why we'll see it does this, you know, how our history has shown that our economy just goes up and down because it's not the invisible hand of the market guiding this. It is speculation.
It's funny you bring that up. So yesterday, I got into a show on Showtime called Billions.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
It's actually really good. I'm through, I think, season 1, but it's all about the stock market and hedge funds and the government basically going after them. You know, and you have your main characters, this whole thing, but there's so many times where they manipulate the stock market, short sell it, do all these things to make it work for, you know, people to make billions off. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you have your corrupt government agencies and, you know, those things. But it's funny you brought that up because I just started watching that show yesterday. I'm like into it or something like that now. But it's all about the stock market and how they manipulate it and how people can change it and do those things.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy that we let our economy kind of run off of that.
But it's just humans. Like you said, it's basically a high society gambling. That's all it is.
But it's gambling with a lot of people's.
Oh God.
Essentially. Yeah. That's interesting about the rioting and the looting, and you have seen these memes popped up about, you know, it's one thing to go into, and I by no means want to defend rioting. I think, you know, that's not an answer to anything, but I think it's just when you're in a boiling pot, water's gonna start boiling over the surface, and that's what we're seeing with these riots. But then you see the corporations took, you know, the CARES or the big bailout for this pandemic was supposed to be for small businesses, and you're just seeing the big corporations pretty much took most of that money.
Soak them up. Yeah, and like you said, I'm with you. I don't agree with rioting and looting and destroying other people's property. I 100% agree with the protest in a peaceful manner. It's one of the things that makes our nation, to me, the greatest in the world. You have the right to stand up and say, you know, screw you. Mr. President, screw you, governor, screw you, whatever. You have the right, if you want to burn the American flag. I would suggest you don't do it in front of me, but you have you have those rights that most countries in this world, you don't get to speak out against the tyrannical government that you live under. North Korea, Syria, you know what I mean? Those places, man, you don't have a voice. China, you don't get to say those things. So one of the great parts about this country is that you get that. However, man, the looting and the stealing and destruction of property and just burning people's cars, not, I don't get it. I saw it firsthand. I really don't understand it. You want to protest, man, you're pissed. I get it. The boiling water analogy, I guess I get that too. I mean, everyone's struggling, everyone's broke. What else, everyone's got too much time on their hands, too much frustration, all those things. But yeah, I can't. I just not something I can get behind. I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really interesting that we're looking at it's almost like a big social experiment with this mixture of being stuck inside for the past 3 months, and then all this social media and media attention on these cases, we can start getting into it now about how police in this country, like, we need them because there's crazy people out there. There's a lot of darkness, sickness. Like, we come from, me and you have talked about it, where we've seen the darker elements of society. We know that it exists. You can talk about all how hopeful you are of humanity, and yes, there is a lot of good people, but there's a lot of evil people out there that, given the opportunity, will do terrible things to people, and we do need people to protect us from that. But that being said, police need much better training, in my opinion, to be able to deal with these types of situations. And we're seeing it firsthand with some of these cops. Like, you're not going to de-escalate a situation by force, using violence, against people that, for the most part, I wasn't there for any of these incidents, but what we see on video is, like, these guys were not at points where you had to use such force and kill. There's nothing you shouldn't be kneeling on a guy's neck for 8 minutes, 6 seconds.
And murder is murder. I mean, let's just be real clear, dude. That's just flat out murder. But, like, to kind of spin off of what you said, first off, I 100% agree, and I tell my daughters this all the time. 100% the boogeyman is real. So, and they're out there. There's really bad people out there who have to have law enforcement. But I was talking to my wife and daughters the other day about this. I personally believe, well, hold on, I'll get back to that, because I saw the greatest meme today, and it said, it takes an attorney, I think, 8 to 12 years to get to practice law. And it takes a cop 6 months in the police academy to enforce it.
Yeah.
But what I see in that, and I've said for years and years and years, that the cops, law enforcement, they're way, way, way undertrained. They do, if they did a month of defensive tactics in the police academy, I would be super surprised. And then who's teaching that? Because I've seen they used to have a show on TV, and it was on the LA County Sheriffs, and it would follow recruits through the police academy, and the crap they were doing was just absolutely asinine. It was borderline embarrassing watching it. It made me want to throw up watching the stupid crap that they would do when they're going through their defensive tactics training. It's garbage. But I think what you get when you have the proper training, and I believe that boils down 100%, especially in law enforcement, to they should be focusing a tremendous amount on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and defense tactics. But when you have the proper training and you walk into a situation with confidence, it's amazing how just your aura can de-escalate a situation in a snap of a fingers.
100%.
Go into a confrontation or to a situation like this panicked, it's amazing of how fast that panicked aura and that freak out personality will escalate the situation to madness also that fast.
100%.
You know, and these guys and girls in law enforcement are just not given the tools that they need. They go to a police academy for 6 months. They do some stuff. They say, you're good. Here's a badge and a gun. Go protect us. Man, I couldn't do it. I'll tell you right now, I had the opportunity to do it. My dad's a retired cop around here. I had the opportunity to go to the police academy sponsored by that department, have a job with that department, and I absolutely chose not to. I said, thanks, but no thanks, because there's no way that I can do that job.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, and what they have to do too, like the amount of services that cops have to provide, they're not only, you know, enforcing the law, but they're acting as social workers out there in domestic disputes, you know, domestic violence disputes, everything, you know, like they're having to work as social workers with kids.
Yeah.
You know, and
they're mediators between parents that can't get along to do a custody drop off.
Yeah.
Have to be there to make sure that as the kid is transferred from the mom to the dad, that they don't get in this screaming match that's not good for the children to see. I mean, they're used, like you said, as social workers, as crossing guards, as all these other things that it's not what they were trained to do, signed up for, paid to do, anything you want to, you know, any of those things you want to say.
Yeah.
We don't give them the knowledge and the training base that they deserve and that they need to protect and serve.
100%.
I mean, we've created this monster, and it's a monster. And like I said, man, I don't support what's going on. Murder is just flat out murder. Yeah, but yeah.
What do you think about the newest one? I don't know if you've seen the one in Atlanta.
Wendy's, whatever that was. I read about it today. I read that the officer was fired immediately.
Yeah.
The other officer was put on admin leave, and they're considering filing charges, I think tomorrow, against the officer that was involved in the shooting. But I don't know. I just read about it today. I guess some guy drunk in his car, they tested him, then they fought with him. He took a taser, took off running, turned around, pointed the taser at the officer, and the officer shot him, I believe.
So I believe the officer that he pointed the taser at had a tase. He didn't have a gun out. I believe it was the other one from behind shot him. But that's just from me looking at the video. I don't know exactly what's going on. What I will say though is that they shot him while he was running away, which is it's interesting. You know, he took the guy's taser. If he would have took the other police officer's gun, then maybe you could say you got to use deadly force. But he ran away with your taser, and you shoot him in the back. That's, you know, that's a little.
I will say this, devil's advocate, just purely devil's advocate. I'm not taking sides here. I don't know enough about it to say, but I mean, if they shot him in the back, again, murder is just murder, man. I don't know if it warrants that, but devil's advocate at night, just got in a fight with this guy. He took the taser.
Maybe he doesn't know that.
Doesn't know that it's just a taser, and he around and points it at you. I don't know, man. Like I said, I can't do that job.
Yeah. And that's what's so tricky about it is like, I agree with people for being outraged because it's a terrible time for you to be killing anyone, but especially
really bad timing. Really, really bad timing for sure.
But I will say this is a little bit more tricky than say the George Floyd incident, because this guy did fight with them. He did disarm this guy, the cop. Again, shows how badly trained these officers are. Like the scuffle was ridiculous. You had two cops who could not handle this guy. He actually he actually reversed the guy. He swept one of the cops and took his taser from him.
I heard a great story once from Tim Kennedy, the retired UFC fighter, Army Ranger sniper, just all around badass American. I think it was on the Jocko Willink podcast. He told the story. I could be wrong on that. but he went to a police academy one time. He was invited to work on self-defense tactics with them. And he went 1 against 6. So it's him against 6 recruits. And he said, okay, you 6 against me, handcuff me. Take me down, handcuff me. And he said by the time it was over, I think he had a handcuff on his ankle. He had passed one of them out, and the rest were all handcuffed together.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I mean, the details could be wrong. I heard the story years ago, but I mean, the premise of the story is, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know, what are you going to do? You know, and there's a lot of people out there now that train in martial arts, mixed martial arts, ground fighting, those things that, what are you going to do? I would say I'm below average or average at best at grappling and those things, in my opinion. And one-on-one against a cop who's never trained, what are you going to do? I'll put you on your goddamn head, and there's nothing you could do to stop me.
Yeah.
And there's guys out there that are so many levels above me when it comes to those things.
But that's the thing. Us who are, like you're saying, I'm average as well. But being trained, I know this, but I also know I'm not going to do that to a cop.
For sure. Because I'm not a psycho either.
Because I know they will shoot.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's something that's interesting. What's going on right now is that I think colored people are much more aware of the fact that we could get shot in an incident like that. Like, I've been assaulted by cops twice in my life, and both times I didn't want to fuck with them because they were way more angry than me. They were way more, like, I could just see it in them, you know, having been around combat and as martial arts and stuff, you can tell when someone's on edge. And every cop that I dealt with in those situations was way on edge. I'm like, dude, these guys have guns drawn on me. I am not going to do anything to make them shoot.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I was, you know, completely wasted or you know, not of my wits, and they're doing that to me, I could see how, you know, you would react, you know, just through second nature. And
yeah, and I think that boils down, in my opinion, to real world experience on how to control your heart rate, deal with adrenaline, control yourself, you know, not freak out. And I think it's going to boil down to simply, to become a police officer, you can't have the real world experience that most people on the street have, because that would disqualify you from being an officer. You're not going to have the street fights. You're not going to have, you know, those confrontations. You're not, you know, you cannot have those things on your record because it'll disqualify you. Then you've got to go through the voice stress analysis test where they're going to ask them, and you're going to fail if you lie, you know, and all those things. And so you've got these guys and gals who probably a decent percentage of them have never actually been in a street fight.
Yeah.
So they don't even know how to identify if one is coming or not. So they go from 2 to 10 when really they could have went from 2 to 3 and had a better result.
Mm-hmm.
Them immediately, this is, oh my God, it's going to get crazy. Oh my God. Hey man, no, I'm just asking you a question. My hands are out in front of me. I'm not being aggressive, but to them, they don't have enough experience to basically see if that person is escalating or not. Not all the time. Sometimes these people, I mean, sometimes it just goes from 2 to 10, man, and you got to be ready to go.
Yeah.
They don't even have that experience to see, you know, when someone's going from 2 to 4, all right, man, now they're at 6, you should be creating space. You should be protecting your gun. You should be turning your shoulders, you know, moving your hips. You should be doing those things, but they don't even have that. And they get caught up like the one last night in Atlanta. That guy should have never been close enough to that dude to throw him on his head and take his taser.
Yeah.
But they probably don't have that real world street experience to where they could see this guy escalating, and it might have been their fault. Might have just been this guy's, you know, how this guy gets down. But they've never been in a street fight. Maybe. You know, I'm not saying for sure. Who knows?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
You think about that. Maybe here's the other thing that's interesting too, is that how many of these officers do you think are dealing with symptoms of PTSD from the job, where it's like they've seen so much terrible shit that they just,
They become jaded.
yeah, yeah. And then it becomes where they're on edge every time they pull someone over because one of their partners got shot in a traffic stop. Like we don't give enough credit to the fact that these cops are under a tremendous amount of pressure to do their jobs
And stress.
putting their lives on the line
Every day. I mean, they're going, and they're the same. Most of them are the same as the rest of us. Probably in the 99% are just like you and I. They're going to do a job that pays them well. They have the benefits. They have all these things, and they want to go home to their wife or husband and children. So when they approach that vehicle, their senses are going to be heightened. They might, like you said, they might have just read a story about, not someone in their department, but maybe somewhere else that got shot at a traffic stop, and it was just an average traffic stop. They weren't even going to give the guy a ticket. They were going to give him a warning. Hey man, slow down, whatever. And they get shot. So the tremendous amount of stress that law enforcement is under is insane. And I think you get jaded and you start seeing things and you start dealing with the same people, the same type of people. You hear the same stories from everybody and all these things. And after a while, you're going to these confrontations and these calls going, oh, here we go again. This same old bullshit, and I'm going to get, spit on, spoken to this way. Maybe they're going to pull a gun. Maybe they're going to pull a knife. Maybe. And so they're going in there heightened, adrenaline pumping, fear pumping, and those things make you do they cause you to make irrational decisions.
100%. I don't know if you know much about Eugene and what their program is with the police. I was just reading about this today. I think it's interesting. So in Eugene, they do the cops don't handle a major percentage of calls to the police department, whether it's like domestic disturbances or whatever. They have a program where they send out social workers and people trained to deal with these situations. And I don't know the numbers, but it's actually a lot cheaper, and it makes the police more focused on violent crimes and actually
policing. Yeah.
Policing. Yeah. I definitely want to ask Karima and see if they know how much they know about what's going on up there with that. But I think that's an interesting way of approaching it.
I believe San Francisco just announced they're rolling out that same model effective immediately.
Really?
Yep. Okay. I believe so. Yeah, I read something or heard something about that. So now it's going to be basically unarmed social workers handling most of those, social, I want to say social, I don't know how, those disturbance calls where it doesn't need an armed police officer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Eugene is wildly different than San Francisco. I'll tell you that right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, Oregon's a unique place for sure.
Yeah.
Things like that. But I mean, the statistics have shown like they're not dealing with people. Like I guess the biggest fear would be, okay, what happens if this person does decide to be violent? What happens to social workers? But I guess the statistics are showing that they haven't had any cases.
Well, if you look at, sorry, go ahead.
But like you said, I think it's different from region to region. I don't know if that would work as well in like the south side of Chicago or in LA or East Oakland. I think it might be a little bit different a little more stressful to handle house calls like that.
But if you look at the premise of that, in theory, it should be a better solution. Because what you're doing now, and I don't know all the dynamics of it and how it's going to work. I don't know. But just in kind of my gorilla brain thinking about it, you have let's say a low-level domestic dispute. So if you send a social worker or someone that has the training to deal with those kind of things, as opposed to someone with a gun and a badge and doesn't have the, I guess, the mental training or, you know, the mental coaching capabilities.
Yeah.
I mean, I like you said, so situational to territories and areas and those things. But yeah, man, I mean, if you have let's say a father and a son, maybe had a few too many drinks, they're fighting, they're just arguing over some old shit, whatever, and you send someone that knows how to de-escalate that situation by talking, because they have those degrees or that time or that experience, I could see how that would be wildly successful.
Yeah.
Instead of sending armed law enforcement into that situation, because now it turns, and you hear these stories all the time. I've never experienced one because I've never been in law enforcement, but you'll hear these domestic disputes all the time. And let's say it's a husband and wife and they're beating on each other and they're fighting and they're drunk, and the cop shows up and he's like, man, this is crazy. And he puts handcuffs on the husband, and all of a sudden the wife jumps on the cop and, don't you arrest my husband, you know? So yeah. I don't know why that happens, or that pack mentality or whatever goes on with people. Obviously they have some issues they need to work through in their relationships, but send someone in there that has that professional experience of how to talk to these people. Social workers are freaking great, the majority of them, you know, and the stuff they have to go through. Man, situational, I think that could be, yeah, could be the right move.
And I think, man, this is my hope, is that I think that's what people are trying to get across with this defund the police. I hate the fact that we generalize everything so much.
Yeah.
So it's like arguments are made based on that statement alone, which it's not getting the point across. Like, it's not about just taking money away from the police and disbanding police. I don't think that's the major argument. I think the major argument is we need to reallocate funds so that we can better handle situations like this. So it's not the police that always have to come in armed and deal with these situations. I think that's the main, at least that in my eyes, that's what makes most sense, not just disbanding police.
No, and I think if you look into the root of the defunding mode, and I think that's I think the problem with it is the word defunding, because immediately when you hear they're going to defund the police, you think immediately they're disbanding the police. And so I think it's getting a bad rap. I don't know if I agree with it or I don't, but I think what they're saying is, instead of buying these, you know, armored freaking Humvees that you would drive down the main strip of Iraq in 2006 in Ramadi, when it was the worst, you know, part of the war we've ever seen, maybe we need to allocate some of those funds to social workers, mental health experts. I mean, I don't know, man, give some to freaking schools in the education program too, because really at the end of the day, I think that's where we're kind of going wrong and missing the boat is in the education program. But everyone's immediately thinking, you're going to defund the police, that means you're going to take all their money away. And that's, from what I've looked into it, what I've seen, that's not the case. People are calling for police to be disbanded, which is asinine. But I know I think in LA, the budget for law enforcement in LA is well over $1 billion.
So crazy. So
they're saying, let's take a quarter of that and put it into social workers and mental health experts and those kind of people, those kind of industries.
For sure. And I think accountability with those funds is so important right now. Like, how much of our governments, all police, everything, they get these budgets. How much accountability is there on what they're spending them on? You know, like,
who's policing the police?
Exactly. And that definitely needs to change. And I think that's the major reform that needs to happen, that there needs to be some accountability in police, also in politics, and also with big business. Like, this business of, like you were talking about with the UFC, where it's like, we have this system set up where big businesses can pretty much hide everything that they're doing from the general public,
Mm-hmm.
pay with what they're doing, and it's all under this veil of, well, they're a private citizen of the U.S. because of, you know.
And they live in a lot of take it or leave it. The UFC is a great example of take it or leave it. Because if the problem with what Leslie Smith is facing, if we're gonna, let's circle back to that real quick with this union of fighters, is that you can't have a union when there's people willing to cross the picket line, basically. So until all of the fighters together, and it's going to have to be led by John Jones, Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, you know what I mean? Some of these monumental names.
Andrew,
Yeah.
the women.
Yeah. And Amanda Nunes, you've got a ton of people, but there's always going to be someone willing to fight for 10 and 10.
Yeah.
And when you have that, you're never going to have success with unionizing. Because if you have 98% of the fighters going, yeah, screw you guys, we're not fighting, but you have 2% that are willing to go in there and fight for peanuts just sometimes to be able to say they did. Sometimes that 10 grand is monumental to them, so can't fault them for that. Or the chance to be famous and maybe be a Conor McGregor. If they're willing to go do that, then you're never going to have the change. And big businesses are run the same way. Screw you. You don't want to do the job for $18 an hour. I'll find someone that will. And they do. There's people that need the money.
Yeah.
You know, and until we have the oversight and until we have that correction, we're not going to have change. No changes unless it hurts. And government, big business, all of those things, the only thing that hurts them is money. That's it. So they're never going to change. Until it costs them everything, they're never going to change.
Yeah. And I agree with you too, with especially with, it has to be through solidarity. That's the only time that big business has changed, is when labor movements have happened. And that's the only reason there's an 8-hour workday. Before then, it was like they would work you until you drop.
Yep.
And for pennies and a minimum wage. Like those were hard fought battles in the 20th century to get those very small concessions, you know, and it took major movements of solidarity to get that. So, I mean, there is power in the people when we're in solidarity, but without that solidarity, there's nothing.
There's power in the people when the people stand together in solidarity, right? If not, there's so much. Excuse me, we live in a world of what's in it for me. Where's mine? Not where's ours. So I remember I went to work for a company several years ago, and I went in there to work on the construction side and estimate and do these things. And the first project manager I worked with, where the first job I did with this company, I remember he looked at the budget and he's like, well, where's my nut in this? How am I going to make my bonus? How me? Where am I going to get mine? And I remember I was step back. I was like, damn, Holmes, what about us? Like there wasn't, you know, first off, we owe it to the company because I get a paycheck. I'm paid to make the company money. So where's theirs? Then where's ours? And that's where society as a whole is right now. That moment reflected for me the society as a whole.
Yeah.
And it used to be, it took a village to raise a kid, or, you know, it took a village to raise, but now it's not. It's just, what do I get? What do I have? How much money can I make? Not my neighbors. Not, you know, it doesn't go that way anymore.
Yeah.
You know, from the minimum, you know, as small as, you know, people used to mow their neighbor's lawn. You take out your neighbor's trash cans. You don't see that crap anymore. It's not there because everyone's just so self-centered and so focused on inside of their doors that we're never going to have that solidarity. We're never going to, I mean, you want change, stand together, make the change. It's not going to happen. There's too much divide.
That's always been one of my bigger arguments about capitalism and democracy. I feel like they don't coexist because capitalism makes you think individualistically, where everything, like you're saying, is about that bottom line. Me, make sure that I take care of me. Democracy at its core is supposed to be, people making the decisions.
We the people.
What was that?
Democracy at its core is we the people.
We the people, exactly.
Oh.
I feel like that's been the constant battle in American history, is that you have one end that's telling you, no, make sure and take care of yourself. And on the other hand, say, no, but you got to take care of your neighbor. And I think as times were tougher, people realized they had to rely on each other more. And so I think that's where we've seen a shift. My buddy sent me a really good meme that was something along those lines of, hard times make hard people, soft times make soft people. And, like, I forgot what else, but you get the gist of, it's a cycle. And I think we're going through a time where we're a little softer. So everyone's thinking about themselves. Everyone's, we don't know how to work together. But when it's hard time, you realize you got to be resourceful. You have to take care of your neighbor. You have to be good with the people around you. Otherwise, if you're not good with them, no one else is gonna have your back. And it's gonna be really hard to take on the world individually.
We have shifted from we the people to me the people. Really, at the end of the day, and it's unfortunate, but that's a great old quote. Hard times create hard people. We're freaking fat and happy, man. We're spoiled. Yeah. I mean, really, at the end of the day, most people's concern is if their Wi-Fi works well enough to go on their social media account to upload pictures of their goddamn dinner. Or or giving the homeless guy, $10. Or, and it's not about what you do anymore. It's how many people will like what you do. Mm. I see one more freaking person post a video about feeding some homeless family, I'm going to lose my absolute goddamn mind. Because it's not about helping that family. It was about you posting that you helped that family. It's not about that family anymore. It's about you and how people see you for doing that. I know people, that do those things, and it's not a big publicity stunt. I mean, I don't know. I do those kind of things because it feels good to do them. And that's just that's enough gratitude, is it just felt right to help. It feels right to help other people. But God, so much of the population doesn't think that way anymore. This social media freaking likes and, and all that, I mean, that shit really is what has caused so many of our freaking divide and our problems.
And going on that too, I would guarantee probably the people who do post about it and stuff, they're probably not even doing it. I saw this one where like these Instagram influencers were at the protest, but they would just like stand real quick and get their but then they'd walk. It's like, is that what we've do, where it's just the projection of what you think you want to say that you are, but it's such a fake way to live. And
what's that one I saw? It was some social media influencers, whatever, and people were boarding up their business, and they pulled over, and the girl asked if she could help. The guy said, yeah, I gave her the screw gun. She acted like she was putting a screw into the plywood to the window to secure it. The person in the car with her took her pictures. Once he said they were good, she threw the screw gun down, jumped in the car, and they drove off.
That is crazy. Like, yeah.
But I mean, that's the society we live in now. Because I guarantee you that was on her Instagram or Facebook or freaking whatever all these other ones are called. In seconds, she probably got a shit ton of likes, a shit ton of views. That's how they make money on Instagram and these social media platforms, is how many people see their content and those things. And she was out. She didn't want to help. She just wanted to feel good. She wanted to look on her freaking Instagram and see how many goddamn likes she got.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a major problem with people's accountability and just being good people. Like, the ego's gotten out of control, which is something that I talk about a lot on my, you know, just with my art right now. I see that, and I don't know if you checked out the last podcast I put up. I kind of talked about it because for me, it's something that I take personally for me. Like, I always try and question my own ego because I'm human. We all have an ego. We all see it come to fruition in different ways. And so I'm always trying to check myself and my ego. And I feel like if I don't do that, it'll run amok. You know, and I think we as people need to take personal responsibility of how we act in this world and know where our morals are and what we speak on. And for me, I see a lot of what's going on is egos going unchecked with commenting on things that maybe not you don't know so much about. You know, I think that's a big problem with this movement is a lot of people are commenting and putting their 2 cents in, and they really don't know what it's like for some of these people to walk down the street. And you know, I do believe because I know a lot of friends who legitimately are afraid every time they deal with a cop or every time they deal with anybody white, you know, which is unfortunate. Sure. It's not because all these white people are out to get them, but it's because it's so ingrained in their history. They have grandparents who got beat down by cops. They have great grandparents who were, you know, slaves. You know, it's we think that's so far away, but it's really just 2 generations away that we had slaves in America. You know, 1850s. It may be 3 generations, but you know, that's not a long time, and there's still a lot of cultural healing that must happen. And I think that's a big part of what we're seeing is that there's still healing that needs to happen, and people should understand that instead of being right away vilifying or getting angry with people for, you know, protesting as part of being American.
A great example is that. Did you see Karima's post about Eugene, Oregon on Facebook yesterday, the day before?
I don't think so.
About, I think until, man, I wish I could find it real quick. At some point until I think maybe the early 2000s, they had racial language in their laws and bylaws.
In Oregon?
Yeah, in Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon's really.
So, I mean, but we're not that 2000, that was 20 years ago. That's not that freaking long ago, man. You know, this stuff didn't happen in the 1400s. I mean, you're talking 20 years ago. And I don't know, there's some Midwest states that it still goes down that way.
Yeah.
You know, so it's still a very sensitive, very real, very up-to-date hot topic. Mm-hmm. We don't get it. I cannot. So we were doing a board up in Oakland when the riots were happening. It was Saturday evening. We're still there. And the store we were working at, there was an ATM machine next door. And this older black gentleman came up. He was in his 80s and was getting some tools out of my truck. And he goes, "Hey, young man." And I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "I want to thank you for what you're doing here because this is the only store that us older folks can afford to shop at." And it was let's just say that. And I said, "It's absolutely my pleasure." Two things. Number one, it's the right thing to do. Number two, it's also my job to do it. Mm-hmm. You know, and we talked for a while, and I wish we could have talked longer. He actually said, he's like, "I got to get home. My wife's going to beat me if I don't." Well, I've been out too long. It was funny, and I had to get back to work. I had like 20 guys that I had, you know, were kind of not waiting on me, but we're working. I need to get back to work. But in all the discussions, you know, and I told him, I said, "Man, I don't get what you've been through. I can't. I have no idea. Number one, I ain't living the time. Number two, we don't share the same skin color. We don't, you know, and so I don't fully understand that pain, and all of those things. And really the only thing we can do is try to be sensitive to it, but we're not going to get it. I don't know. I've been harassed by law enforcement. You've been harassed by law enforcement. There's white people out there that have been harassed by law enforcement. It's not fun, but I can almost guarantee it's not to the degree as a lot of people have faced it, you know, and the times that it's happened to me, I hated it. It made me so angry. It felt disgusting, all those things. So I can only freaking imagine if it's your everyday, what you're going to feel like.
Yeah, something I wanted to talk with you. I was curious if you knew about this. To kind of go along these lines and see how deep it goes. We saw all these images of white people in Michigan standing outside the Capitol building with armed rifles, weapons, and everything. That same thing happened back in 1969 with black people in California. It was the Black Panthers. They went to Sacramento. They stood outside of the Capitol and they were demanding that they were going to use their Second Amendment right. At that time, it was legal to have open carry.
So, yeah, we're going to talk the Mulford Act. Is that where we're going?
Okay, exactly. Yes, so yeah, the Mulford Act was before then, California open carry. Yep. Literally because of that incident and because the Black Panthers were patrolling the police using, they weren't attacking police, they were just standing there whenever they pulled over a black person or anything, and they made sure to let that black person know that their rights, make sure that, and they were just yelling out to them, we're here. So if they do anything shady, we're here. Well, politicians did not like that. Government got incredibly scared and literally they passed the Mulford Act, which banned open carry in California. But it's the only legislation that the NRA has ever supported against
Second Amendment,
against being able to carry arms. So I thought that was incredibly enlightening and interesting to realize that NRA supported that, and I would be very hard pressed to see them support that when it comes to this very similar situation, which they're not supporting. It's like when it's white people, it's a different story. When it's black people, it's a different story. So,
of course. Well, at the root of that, you just have to talk about the times. You're talking 1967, 1968.
That passed in 1969.
Okay, so and I don't know who runs the NRA today. I don't know honestly much about it, but I can pretty much guarantee who was running it in 1967, 1968, 1969. Bunch of rich ass white dudes.
Yeah.
So of course, I'm sure they were very uncomfortable with a bunch of armed black men standing on the Capitol door, steps. So I'm sure they had no problem supporting the Mulford Act. It would never. Yeah, I don't know if it would fly now. Like I said, though, I don't know who runs the NRA these days or what their demographic is. I have no idea. But
so what do you think? Like, if it was a bunch of black guys that were standing out of the Capitol in Michigan, you think they would have gotten a similar response? It's really hard to say.
I would hope to say yes, because I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in our constitutional rights. I believe in this country. So I would like to say, hopefully, they would be treated the exact same way.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, probably not.
Yeah.
If we're that's just a realistic assessment. My realistic opinion, probably not at all.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I think it's a very important, again, to know your history.
But it's crazy. That's just freaking nuts. It's nuts that was allowed to happen. But really, at the core of it, they exercise their Second Amendment rights.
Mhm.
If you take white and black out of it, they exercise their Second Amendment rights to their fullest.
Yep.
Well, it had to be allowed. Now you put racial undertones in it, man, who freaking knows? I don't know.
Well, there's a lot with the Black Panther Party that is misconstrued through history, and I think it's a fascinating thing to study is the history of the Black Panthers and what they had to go through and their direct battle, or not battle, but the massacre of a lot of their leadership by the CIA and the police, at the time, which has been kind of swept under the rug in history by mainstream history, but a lot of African American people in that culture have not forgotten that, and that's something that continues to this day.
And they shouldn't.
No.
It's part of their history, but they shouldn't. Yeah. I think.
Like one of their leaders, Frank. Man, I blank on names a lot.
Fred Hampton.
Fred Hampton, sorry, yeah. Yeah, so you know the story about all that?
I don't know it. I don't know a ton about it.
So he was sleeping in his bed. It's interesting. A lot. He was sleeping in his bed when the Chicago police came through. They said that they were shot at. There was only evidence of one shot going in the direction of the police from his bodyguard who was at the door. He shot right away. So they said the shot came from him already being shot and injured, falling to the ground. He just pulled the trigger, shot the door. Didn't hit anybody, but that was the only evidence of a shot being fired from inside. By the end of it, they said they recovered over 200 rounds of they just came in there blasting.
It's called an assassination, man.
And they shot him, Fred Hampton, back of the head twice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just let's go to current times. Oh God, I just blanked out on her name. Breonna
Taylor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That whole debacle, and
she was sleeping as well.
What's that?
She was sleeping as well, I believe.
Yeah. Her and her boyfriend were sleeping. He had a legal licensed firearm. Some men come through the door. I don't know if they were all white. I don't know. I didn't see them, so I don't know. But they're in street clothes. They kick in the door with guns. He gets out of bed with his gun, and I don't know how many rounds were fired by the police, but it was an awful lot. Killed her and injured him. Ended up, the police had what's called a no-knock warrant, which has now been outlawed in that state,
and
it's the wrong address. Definitely not the same as the Fred Hampton case, but just to current times of an absolute goddamn debacle and a botched raid by the police.
Yeah. What's interesting is they released, now this is probably a lot.
And the boyfriend's in jail still, right? Or was in jail?
I believe so. I'm not sure exactly what that, but what's interesting is that they released the police report on it, and they show the listing for her injuries, none. They basically had it blank. There was nothing that was stating, what happened to her injuries, anything. It just, it seemed like, now I don't know how these things are filled out. I don't know the details of it, but from what I saw, it looked like they were just trying to kind of brush it under the rug, what happened to her. So
I believe what those, like the autopsy reports look like, is they'll have a diagram of a body on a piece of paper, and they'll start drawing like arrows and marks to, like.
It wasn't the autopsy report.
Oh, okay. It was their.
Report.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was what they said happened. The incident report, and it says injuries to whoever was involved, and there wasn't. It literally was blank. Said no injuries for Breonna Taylor, even though she was shot 8 times.
Yeah.
It's just so it's things like that. It just
Yeah. So I mean, so you want these people, and so you're talking history like Fred Hampton and these things, and you see this pattern
the pattern.
all the way, and you want them to trust the police or feel good about it or whatever. I saw a freaking meme earlier today. God damn, I wish I could find it, but it says something like, if the police always did right, we would trust them. No one's ever came out with a song saying "fuck the firemen."
I did see that. It's, exactly. Yeah.
But it's so freaking true.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like you see these patterns, and but the funny part is we go back on the dichotomy of this is we were talking about that pattern earlier, law enforcement, and they become so jaded.
Yeah.
We almost excuse it for law enforcement becoming jaded because of the things they deal with, but it's no different than people that deal with shitty police, and now the community is jaded.
Yeah.
So it can't be okay for law enforcement to be jaded because of the crap they deal with, and not okay for citizens to be jaded because of the shit they deal with. It's got to be fair on both sides.
That's an extremely important point to make. I'm glad you brought that up because that's so true. A lot of people make comments about how, oh, they're antagonizing the police and this and that. And I'll admit, some of these people probably are mouthing off to the police during these,
They're running their mouths because they know ain't shit gonna happen.
Exactly. They're confident that people are filming. It's gonna be okay. But here's the other thing. Like you're saying, they're so jaded. They're so frustrated and fed up with being stopped or whatever, you know, that that's a product of that as well. That these people are mouthing off because they're frustrated and they're tired of being targeted, you know, for whatever reason. And here's something interesting because I want to talk about the prison system, because there's something that we all know now from documentaries and statistics have shown that minority populations make up most of the prison population by a huge percentage. What I found interesting is that since 2006, I might be wrong on that time frame, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. A Pew Research, which I think they're pretty good, like
Credited, yeah,
reliable, has been showing that the gap between white population in prison and Black and Latin and minority populations, the gap is actually decreasing, and the prison populations are decreasing as well, which blew my mind because so much of the attention has been about minority populations being targeted and being put in prisons, which I still 100% think is the case. But it's interesting to see that the trend is starting to change and that they're starting to
balance
out. Yeah. I don't
So,
know. Go ahead.
oh man. So what I really believe the root. God, how am I going to say this without causing a whole shitstorm?
Man, it's my podcast.
I know. Let's take a break real quick. I got to take a break for about 2 seconds. I'm going to come back to that.
All right.
Can we pause and take a break?
Paused.
Yeah. Actually, no. You know what? So I believe at my core that the justice system has turned into who can finance that fight the longest.
Interesting.
Okay, so I have heard stories of, I've heard stories of kids getting caught trafficking, back in the day, marijuana. I heard of one, some white kids from Northern California, one in particular, they get caught with a couple 100 pounds of marijuana in the back of their car going into Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a federal offense, and that's a big deal. But his family could afford to fight that fight, hire the attorneys, spend probably $1 million on his defense, and got him off with low-level criminal charges.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
You see where I'm going with it? It became who has the money to sustain these arguments the longest. And I've seen it where the prosecutors will almost try to freeze or stall and break you financially until you have no choice but to take whatever plea or whatever punishment they offer you.
Mm-hmm.
Because their budgets, they don't have budgets. So you can go to court and they'll be like, oh, we need a continuance. Oh, we need a continuance. We need so many times where the judge says, enough's enough, man, let's go. We just got to rock and roll, either drop the charges or let's move forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's become a system now of where if they can bankrupt your defense, then they're going to get their conviction.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, all that matters to the district attorney's office is statistics. It's convictions. So I think my point in this is that a lot of the Hispanic culture, let's just say the minority cultures, don't have the finances to wage those wars against the prosecution for a very extended period of time. Honestly, most of them are dealing with some bullshit ass public defenders that don't know their ass from a hole in the ground, and you're getting railroaded quickly.
Yeah.
And non-minorities, and it's not only white people all the time, because there's some very affluent families of color and different races and creeds and all those things can afford to wage that war for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And eventually you just come to an agreement of a low-level charge, whatever, you're going to do probation, community service, pay a bunch of fines, and go about your day. I think.
Yeah.
Not that I'm talking from experience or anything, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But you start to see that when it just becomes...
It's a money game.
See it?
So that's what I find so strange about that statistic. Like I would totally get that if the numbers were rising, or the gap was widening. And not forget the race one, like that one's interesting, but what's more surprising to me is the fact that the prison population, the numbers are going down with how much of a percentage of our population is getting incarcerated.
I think when they decriminalized marijuana, the percentage of the prison population went down exponentially.
That could be a big factor for sure, but this was saying since 2006. Let me see if I could pull it up right now because I don't want to misrepresent this.
You can say 2006-ish.
Here it is. Yeah. Black imprisonment rate in the U.S. has fallen by 1/3 since 2006. This is the Pew Research Center. It's a fact tank. So, now that's blacks, but they were also mentioning U.S. imprisonment. The U.S. imprisonment rate has been on the decline since the late 2000s. We still have the highest incarceration rate in the world. So.
Of course.
But yeah, I want to, I definitely need to read into that more and get a little bit more knowledgeable on it. But I just find that fascinating. And it just shows so much of what we deal with in the news and with people's popular reactions to things is not based on the facts. And I think, you know, I've gotten into a couple of debates with our cousin Danny on Facebook about things like this. And the one thing I will give him credit for is he always trying to push like facts. And I think that is important, that we do need to really have a good understanding of what's really going on. And when I see something like this, it makes me think, okay, we don't know, we're not as well versed on the trajectory of things as we want to say what we are. And we can't base our evidence on things we see like on Netflix, a Netflix documentary, you know, which I watched the 13th. I think it's an important documentary. I think there's a lot of good things. Have you seen that one?
I haven't. It's on the list.
Yeah, so that one's definitely about prison population being vastly minorities. But are the statistics correct? You know, I think that's really important, that because I could see how, especially in politics, how these lines are drawn in the sand based on, you know, the popular opinion, and we get away from trying to learn the facts, you know, because we want to be right. And that goes back to what I'm talking about the ego. There's a lot of people making their facts, trying to figure out how they can prove their point, rather than making your argument based on the fact that no, you've tried to disprove your point first. Really look on the opposing side and understand the whole scope of what you're trying to argue before you go out there and start arguing about it. And I think that's really important, is to be able to disprove yourself first before you defend yourself. And
yeah, I like that. That's a great way to look at it. I mean, I think last time I was on the podcast, we spoke a lot about Jocko Willink and his podcast and those things. And one of his main talking points always is the ego. Is ego, and detach away from your ego. Detach, you know, step aside and look at the situation without the ego involved. Mm-hmm. And you know, ego will end. Oh man, I mean, it's horrible. You know, and I try to check mine constantly, keep mine in check. You know, and those things, and especially in business and those things, it's not about right or wrong. Most of the time, right or wrong, it doesn't mean shit. And if you're fighting for right or wrong, that's most of the time, that's just your ego, because you want to be right. It's human nature. You want to be right. But like you said, disprove your theory before you disprove anyone else's. Mm-hmm. You know, find the holes in your argument before you attack someone else's argument. And really just go off of data and fact. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, the numbers hardly ever lie. The data doesn't really lie. The facts, you know, the facts can be skewed, but the data, not always. You know, the numbers can't. But yeah, like you said, man, it's become almost a popularity contest. I mean, look at the president. Look at the president we have now. Politics is just popularity. Yeah. We have a freaking reality TV star as our goddamn president,
and it's showing.
And it's rearing its ugly head. And don't get me wrong, Clinton wasn't a better choice, but you know, it's a popularity contest at this point.
Well, that's what I worry about this election. It's like our two choices are Trump and Biden, you know, and I'm not that confident in Biden either, you know. So like I've seen what Trump can do, and I'm not impressed by anything that he's done. No. You know, I think it's a mess. Even before the COVID happened, I felt like we were in trouble. It just perpetuated. And here's my big issue with him. You know, like I get how conservative people say he's propping up business, whatever. My problem with him is he doesn't show much leadership skills. You know, and I think that's most important as a president, as a leader, is that you got to be able to get in front of the people, inspire them, make them feel like we're going to be all right.
Lead by example.
Lead by example. This guy doesn't even want to take blame for one thing. One thing. Like according to him, everything that he's done is perfect. And to me, that's not what a leader is, you know?
Trump's a perfect example of ego.
Exactly.
You know, and what ego can do to not only yourself but the entire freaking country. Look what his ego has done to this country.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a perfect example of how ego can lead everything astray.
Absolutely.
You know, and don't get me started on freaking Newsom's dumbass either.
But I will give him credit because I did listen to his speech. This was when Trump called the National Guard, or was threatening on the National Guard on the protest. Newsom did make a good speech about we're not going to go down that route, you know, and he did. And like, I'm not a huge fan of him either, but I will say he made me feel more comfortable because it's funny when Trump made that announcement, Moses called me and he was like freaking out. He's like, bro, it's happening. It's happening, man. He's calling in the army on us, all this and that. And he got me all riled up. I was like, oh shit. Like, you could ask Kristen, man. I was freaking out that day because Moses got me all riled up. And then I watched Newsom and I saw his speech. And I was like, okay, there's some level heads.
But the National Guard was here. It was deployed.
They were deployed, but at least, you know, he wasn't saying that he was going to go release them like the hound.
Yeah.
You know, like, and luckily, you know, for the most part, they were just, it's interesting how the military is showing more resolve and sound judgment than, you know, our president. And
yeah.
What's really interesting too is seeing all the military, the generals speaking out against him. Like, when has that ever happened in history?
Yeah.
We're seeing that happen.
And men, hard men, tested men, hard, true, tested men. Mattis, that's a bad dude right there, man. And anytime in the military, when you have a 4-star general nicknamed Mad Dog Mattis,
yeah,
by his subordinates, by his troops, that's a bad man.
Mm-hmm.
Punk. You know, and for him to stand up and be like, man, this is bullshit.
That's crazy.
McRaven has stepped up in the last, I read something, I think, on Saturday, so I don't know how new it is, but saying the same exact thing.
Yeah.
You know, speaking out against Trump, and McRaven's a, you know, retired Navy SEAL 2-star, 3-star general. You know, you've got a lot of credible military leaders saying this guy's a bag of shit.
Yeah. And that actually gives me a lot of hope that, wow.
I mean, it scares the hell out of me if these guys are saying, man, this is bad. You know, because what happens if he gets reelected?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, yeah, it's bad. It's all bad.
Well, let's shift gears and talk a little more inspiring because you brought up Jocko, and I know you met him or you went.
I did.
Talk about that, man. I've been wanting to ask you about that.
Man, so my wife, I think for Christmas, got me tickets to go to his speaking engagement in San Francisco. She got me the VIP, or you get to go in early and listen to him talk, ask a bunch of questions, take pictures, talk to him. So I got to meet him. I got to talk to him a little bit about the old school jiu-jitsu days. So you're talking late 90s, early 2000s jiu-jitsu days. What would you call it? The guy who runs his podcast is Echo Charles, who just got his black belt a couple months ago from Jocko and jiu-jitsu, was there. Got to talk to him for a couple minutes.
Nice.
Yeah, they're very familiar with who David Terrell, my coach, an old roommate and good friend, is. So it was an intense evening. Jocko's an intense individual, man. It was great to see a bunch of men, strong women, and strong kids there asking questions about, you know, how to handle situations involving ego and leadership and those things. And it was about, God, I don't know, probably 3 hours. Probably pretty close. Yeah, 2-3 hours of him just talking about his military experience, guys that he led, men that he buried, Chris Kyle, Mark Lee, Ryan Job, a lot of those guys who died either in war or when they came back. Listen to some of his stories, ask questions. Man, it was intense. It was cool. It was
Awesome.
highlight for sure.
What's the, if you can remember, what's like one of the takeaways you took from it?
Gosh,
if anything.
one of the from that night, I think probably one of the biggest takeaways I took away from him that night was the passion and intensity that he carries when he's talking about leadership and checking your ego and detaching and making a call and those things. It really was. You can kind of see how passionate he is about that. So it's not, I mean, it's something that he lives to his core.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always something that you can get from a podcast or reading his books.
Yeah.
But when he's up there talking about it and gets emotional about it, you can really tell how much it means to him. And that was probably the biggest impact on me on that evening.
Yeah. That's saying something too, because you're pretty impassioned with your speech too. So I know that probably affected you.
I try to be, yeah. I mean, it really did, you know, yeah, it got me to the core of, yeah, talking to someone that I work with, one of my cousins from my mom's side, who were talking about management and leadership and those things. And it's almost like being an artist or a chef or those things, because it's a passion business.
Yeah.
People, you know, I like to ask people a lot in business and in leadership and things, what's your why? Why do you do this? Why do you get out of bed? Why? And if money's your answer in leadership and management, you're in the wrong business. It's the passion of leading people. It's the passion of, like, for chefs, cooking that meal for someone and seeing that look on their face when the fork touches their lips. It's the passion of an artist finishing a project, a tattoo artist finishing a piece, a parent seeing their child, you know, ride a bike for the first time. Those are passion things. You're never going to make the money that, not never. Most people aren't ever going to be compensated the way they should be for those things because of how much they put into it. So, I mean, for me, it's a passion of mine. The board ups this riot were a great example. When I don't get to go work on job sites and do those things as much now, being in upper management, but to be there, I had my tool bags on and I'm looking at all these kids. And when we got there, they didn't know how to do this. By the time we left, they were out doing their own. And I was just kind of oversight on a lot of them, unless they were big, complex jobs. But to see them come together and to start to understand what I was saying and hearing how I was speaking and kind of picking up on what I was doing, that for me is the ultimate end game. And it's almost, you know, I almost get choked up, you know, with it. And our regional director showed up. He actually showed up earlier that day with his jeans and boots on, worked all day with us. Never instruction in his life. Never did it. But he knew that it was all hands on deck. So he was there. But by the end of the night, when I'm just standing in the parking lot doing the complex stuff for them, but just really pointing them in the right direction and seeing these guys, these men and these young men find that direction. And you can almost see them kind of come together as a cohesive team and get this job done. And we're talking, it's 10 o'clock at night. They're protesting less than a mile away. They could be coming our way any second. No one turned and ran. No one, you know what I mean? But they got it. And it was almost, man, it was the highlight, you know, those moments of my professional career are highlights. So it's a very passionate thing for me. And to see that passion coming from Jocko and that speaking engagement kind of solidified a lot of the things I feel and I see and hear in that era, or in that world, I guess.
Let's talk, I mean.
And he's freaking huge. Jesus Christ.
Right?
He's as wide as he is tall.
Yeah. That's cool, man. I'm glad you got when I saw that you went to that, I was pretty pumped for you.
Oh man, I couldn't, I was like man, every day, like as the countdown got closer and closer, man, I couldn't freaking wait to get there. I was, yeah, I was stoked. I got there early. I was there an hour early, pen and paper in hand, ready to go, waiting in line to get in.
That's awesome. Uh, we have I want to touch on this because you kind of brought it up. We're talking about passion and stuff. But me and you have talked a little bit about, I know since me and you have started talking more and getting to know each other better, you have told me that some of the things that I've done, going out to help the homeless and stuff, inspired you. I want to talk to you about that because we had that talk where you said you were on the job and you talked to that kid, on the job, and I
What
remember,
was his name? Killian?
yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me how that shifted for you, because I don't know. I feel like it's been a shift for you where you started to are made that leap to start paying attention to people more as human beings in that sense, um, and just being more considerate and trying to learn about a person's situation rather than jumping to conclusions, which I think that's an important thing to touch on with this day and age. Everyone jumps to conclusions about people, but
Honestly, man, you know what? Probably it might sound a little corny. The biggest impact on that in my life, honestly, was the Jocko Willing podcast.
okay,
Because
yeah.
when I started, I think in 2016 or 17, he was on the Joe Rogan Experience for the first time, and I listened to that podcast 100 times, maybe more. I don't know. And then he was on he was actually on the Tim Ferriss podcast before that, and then I listened to that one afterwards. But I think when I became more in touch with my ego, it made me more compassionate as a human being, I think. And influences of people like yourself, honestly, and seeing the things that you have done. And it's stuff that I've always done, but seeing it on a grander scale and how you've dealt and not dealt, how you deal with and sit down and talk to a lot of those people, had a great influence on me, man. It really has. A lot of it too might just be age. You hit 40 and you see things differently. I just turned 44 a month ago, and you see the world through different eyes. You really do. It's not what's that with age comes wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you just start to see a shift in I just saw a shift in myself of being more compassionate and just seeing the world through eyes filled with wisdom more than anything. Less anger, less hate, less, those things, and just become calmer, man. I don't know. I'm getting old. I got all this gray hair now, losing my hair on top of that. I got teenage daughters, but probably more than anything, more than Jocko, anything, is my wife and children. And following their example of being great people. Yeah, it's just it's allowed me to be I don't want to say a great person, striving to be a great person.
Yeah.
That conversation with that kid that night was weird. I mean, the way it started, him shooting up in a doorway, 4 feet from me, maybe, as I'm sitting in my truck writing up, reports and time cards, and listen to him talk to himself about what he was doing. And I didn't say a word to him because it's a very kind of awkward situation, to say the least. And then, he kind of broached the subject and we spoke for a while. I don't know, man. I don't know what's caused that shift. A lot of you, a lot of my wife, a lot of my children, a lot of me, a lot of outside influences like Jocko and those things. I don't know.
Well, I gotta say, like something like that, I obviously couldn't express it the way I wanted to through text that night, but you know, that was significant for me to hear from you that night. I'm pretty sure I was going through a pretty rough day, and when you text me that, it just reaffirmed a lot of things. It reaffirmed that humanity exists in even the darkest areas, you know, and I think it's important for us to see the humanity in everyone, even the people we perceive as monsters, you know, which is what a lot, that's what's tough with these situations. Like, I don't by any means want to defend, you know, police that are killing people like this, but I don't want to see them as monsters. And that's really hard, I know, for a lot of people to hear. You know, like you hear about these police, and you right away people are calling for them justice to be served, lock these guys up for the rest of their lives. And for me, I think the issue is so much more complex than that. Like, justice in this day and age isn't really justice. You know, it's almost like fighting fire with fire. If we're just gonna continue to punish people for making human mistakes, which I'm not saying all of these are human mistakes, but in the long run, like, they're humans. Did this guy premeditate killing this man? Who knows? Actually, my Kristen was telling me today, I guess they found out that the officer knew George Floyd beforehand. They had worked.
Yeah, they worked. I think they worked together at a nightclub.
Yeah, so that holds that makes it a whole different game. I feel like who knows how long their history is and what's going on between them.
Yeah, but even history doesn't dictate premeditation. Is the law is written?
For sure not. But it does add a different layer.
For sure. Yeah.
So, but my point being is that regardless, the guy's a human being. His life's gonna be ruined for the rest of his life if he goes to jail.
And his kids and his wife or ex-wife now or whatever, yeah.
So every time we punish people, it affects more than that person.
Yeah, it's ripple effect.
It's a ripple effect in our society.
You're never punishing just one person, you know. Yeah, I need to use the restroom. I'll be right back.
All right, no problem. Let me pause this so no everyone's not just looking at me, because we've already been going 2 hours, man.
I know, we're cruising. I wanted to we're back on. I wanted to
not yet. Tell me when you want me to get back on.
Whenever you're ready.
All right, here we go. There we go.
All right. I wanted to backtrack a little bit when we were talking about that text message I sent you that night when I talked to and I'm pretty sure his name was Killian.
Mm-hmm.
The kid shooting up in the doorway. I sent you that text that night because I wanted to emphasize and make sure that you understand the impact that you've made on other people. And I wanted to make sure you never downplay to yourself or to anyone that impact that you have on people. Because it impacted me enough to text you pretty much as soon as that conversation was over and that kid left. You know, and it was and in that conversation, after that conversation, it made me think of you immediately, and I wanted to reach out, you know. So I just want to make sure that you never underestimate the impact that you've had on the people around you either. Myself included, my huge impact on me. So, you know.
I definitely appreciate that, you know, because it's hard to know that, you know. You reached out to me at that point, but and that's not the reason I even do that, you know. It's nope. Like I just do it like you were saying. It's not about getting recognition for things like that. It's just because that's what I feel for me is being a good human being. That's what my parents taught me and my grandparents, and it's in my blood to be that way. The community that raised me. not just my parents, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins.
Yeah.
Everyone took part in raising me. And so that's where it's like, I really appreciate that, you know, and but I know you understand this, like it's me having that battle with my ego where it's like I try not to let that go to my head, but man, it really did hit me that night, especially to realize that, because it does mean something when you realize you have a positive impact on people's lives, you know, because so much of what we see is like people, you know, it's funny how people reach out to you when they got something bad to say, but it's a lot more people
Yeah,
reach.
all the time. You never
Yeah,
get the good, it's like Yelp reviews.
exactly.
It's like, I wanted to give you a good Yelp review that night. That was my Yelp review for you.
And there's something to say about synchronicity, you know, like you reached out to me at a point where I just needed to, you know, hear that for whatever reason. And but it also to me helps me to push forward, realizing that, you know, my life does make an impact. And just to say the same to you, man, like I hang out with the family a lot. I talk with everyone, and I know, you know, your road with your side of the family has been bumpy at times. To see how people have changed their perspective of you, you know, like I know everyone had a lot of good things to say about you stepping up at the wedding, at Karima's wedding. You know, like you were one of the guys that was doing most everything there that day that I could see. Like you jumped in, you were helping with the food and everything, and I noticed that right away. But to, you know, to hear from everyone else, like they were all saying like, wow, Franco stepped up, and I thought, you know, I've always been like that. Like I've always appreciated you as a person. Me and you have connected ever since we really, you know, started talking. Ever since it was really that road trip, man.
It was the road trip. It was for sure.
But that's one of those things where I tried to see the good in everyone. Try to find that and try and learn from that, because I really believe that even the darkest souls, they were once, Joe Rogan says it, you know, they were once a baby. You know, everyone learns somehow through their experience, through the people who raise them, they learn who they become. And it's not always all they're doing. So we have to appreciate that everyone is a human being. Everyone has their flaws. We need to stop. We need to give each other paths to redemption. Again, something that Joe Rogan talks about a lot. And I think that's really important in this society and really important with these times, is that we can't just put everyone up on the cross and start just judging everyone. Like we got to find redemption for everyone, including our police forces, including people who are rioting, whatever. We got to find understanding with everyone. And that's a hard thing to do, but I think it's important. And maybe that's why, you know, I feel confident speaking on that, because that's something that I've dedicated my life so far to, is understanding people. So
For sure. Jocko says it a lot, but you can't appreciate the light without the dark.
yeah.
You know, and that's, to me, that hits really deep. You can't appreciate, and it's just, you can't appreciate the good without the bad. And I think especially in these times right now, with everything shelter in place and you know, protest, everything we're going through, is that you can't appreciate the good times without the bad times.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that we're kind of in one of those bad time ruts right now. And you have to have those, though, to get back to the good times. It's like when you're sick, right? You get a cold, you get the flu, whatever. You don't feel good. You feel like you're going to die. You get better.
Mm-hmm.
Like my mom used to always say, when you're sick, you can't get better until it gets worse.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing, I think, as a nation and as a, you know, a lot of instances of world we're dealing with. You know, we there's a lot of healing that we need to do, but we can't do it without exposing the wound first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and yeah, man, I don't know, but yeah, I do love it. Joe Rogan says all the time, he's like, he's like, man, I love a success story, but I really love the story of like, God, I'm gonna butcher it, of like the person that was down and out and just should have given up, and he fucking fought back. He's like, that story, those are the stories I love, you know, and I think about that kind of stuff all the time. Like, everyone loves a success story, but there's nothing better than a redemption song.
Yeah.
You know, and I think as a nation, we need to get to that kind of redemption song. Hopefully sooner than later, you know, but yeah, man, it's, you know, even with all this stuff going on, you know, it makes me think of you often. A lot of it was that road trip, man. That was that was a freaking great time. That was an absolute blast, and we got deep on some subjects.
Yeah, we did.
But when I think of even all the stuff going on today, and that kid that was shooting up outside of my car that night, I try to, excuse me, think of how you would handle that situation, because I don't always have that compassion and that ear and that love, and I've been a lot better at it as I got older. But you know, a lot of that was you and the people around me. But I try to constantly think like, man, how would you have handled that situation with that guy that night? You know, and I tried to carry myself at, you know, with the example that you set, that I've seen you do, not just heard about, not you just flapping your gums about. I've actually seen you on several occasions, you know, handle it in a different way. And yeah.
You went with us those times to the city. Yeah. Let me tell you, the first time I did that was nerve-wracking, you know, because it's not only doing, you know, handing out stuff to homeless, but it's like coordinating and dealing with my family and making sure everyone's safe, you know. It was really eye-opening to realize, because that first year, it was like all the kids came and everything, and I was just like, man, it's one thing when it's just me.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable, you know, because I have compassion for these homeless people, but I'm not an idiot too. I'm not. I know that there's mental illness. There's guys who are just off the rocker, you know, who can snap. And you know, having my little cousins around and all the kids, like I was nervous. I was like, all right, I can't let, you know, someone pop off on my family. Like that would ruin the experience. So that was going through my head that first year, but just, you know, again, it's just having that faith that if you put the right energy out, you know, more often than not, it's gonna bring back good energy.
Oh man, that first year I went had my full attention because of those same exact things. Like, it wasn't just you and I, or me, you and Moses walking down the street and talking to these people. There's not a lot of things I'm going to worry about if, you know, if it's just us cruising.
Yeah.
You know, it just is what it is, man, and whatever happens happens. But you start mixing in the family members and the women and the children, and the, you know, like, it brought a whole different dynamic to it, man. It was high stress that entire, like, it a lot more stressful that time.
I'll tell you what, though, it helped me out a lot to know that, you know, you were there that year, especially. Man, you were there. Donovan came, Danny, Marcus,
Oh.
Moses. Was Moses there? I can't remember if Moses ever went. No, I don't think he was there.
No, he was there last year, or the last time we did it. I brought Miyako and Eva.
Yeah.
Mo was
Yeah.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm glad the kid, like that, the big thing of that was always for the kids for me. Even though that was the high stress point of it, I remember that's kind of what's molded me. Is I remember doing things as a young kid that I was. The big thing was Dad Lily. She took us out caroling. I remember when we were kids, you know, at that same time. So it stuck with me to do something for people during Christmas. But to take it a step further, it really was when Moses started the trend where we went to Mexico and built houses for the homeless.
Mm.
And that really had an effect on me. It made me realize, hey, there's people out there who have a lot less than us, you know, a lot less. Here in America, even being homeless, you have a lot more resources available to you than living in a barrio in Juarez, Mexico.
Yeah.
I seen kids playing soccer with a bunch of tape rolled up. That was their soccer ball.
Yeah.
Dirt streets where their houses were made from scrap metal, literally taking wires from, there was one wire pole that went through that neighborhood where everyone got their electricity from. And they had kids climbing the pole to put the electric wire on there so that they could get electricity to their little huts. Like, that's the type of poverty that people don't understand in this country. And I didn't know that until I saw it from my own eyes. You can't read about stuff like that, know what it is. You know, you got to see it. You got to, and this is what blew my mind. This is what made me really realize how important humanity is that even in those circumstances, those are still to this day the most enduring and happy people I've ever met. Was those families, because we were giving them something and they were so appreciative of us being there. And they gave everything to us. Like, they were the ones that wanted to feed us. Even though we're the ones that brought the food, they wanted to cook it. Because and that just shows to me how important community is and how important it is to be have gratitude for what you got. Because it's very easy to lose it all. And I think we're seeing that in this country, like how quick things can change. And people
That's why I brought my daughters last time, because I wanted them to see, I mean, in a blink of an eye, and in a blink of an eye, anyone can be there.
Yeah.
I don't know that any of us would. We're very fortunate to have the friends and family and support networks and stuff that we do. But I needed them to see that not even a wrong decision, just an ill-timed decision. You could be in one of those shanty towns, tents, you know, whatever. And I guarantee those people, I can't guarantee that, I should take that back, but I'm pretty sure those people, that's not what they set out for their future to be.
Yeah.
You know, it was just, a lot of it's mental illness. A lot of it's, you know, you got mental illness and drug abuse, but even that was just a split second bad decision to try that drug or those things, and look where you're at.
You're hooked for life or something.
You're hooked for life, and it's so fast.
Well, not even that, with how much they prescribe opioids in this country, you know, it just takes a bad injury at work. You lose your job, you get on opioids, before you know it, your wife divorces you and you're on the street.
Yeah.
It can happen like that. So,
dude, I was on them. I was hooked on them. I didn't even realize it after one of my knee surgeries.
Really?
And I woke up one day and I was thinking, man, I needed to get to the pill bottle because I just couldn't even function without it. And then that day I was just like, cool, that's a problem. Never taken them since.
Yeah.
And tell you, it was a very tough 7 to 10 days. I mean, it tested every limit of everything that I am. Heart, mental toughness, fortitude, all of those words that people throw around absolutely tested me to its core to get off of that dog shit. And it wasn't something I even realized.
Yeah.
I've had a bunch of knee surgeries. I've had, you know, accidents. I've had those things. Oh, I was actually after I fell and I broke both my arms and I was in that cast and they prescribed me a bunch of them. And I was still working. I ended up cutting my cast off to continue working. And I realized one day that, yeah, I was definitely hooked on those things.
Very easy. And what's sad is that a lot of the elderly populations got hooked on those.
Oh yeah, and they can't get off them. You kill them.
Yeah.
You know, it absolutely murder them. But you know, and then you run into the problems of you go from that to what's the next thing? Heroin.
Yeah. When you can't get your prescription anymore, the next thing is heroin.
Because of course, like we always do, like I was talking about the economy earlier. So we're here, and then we had Everyone go to opioids, boom, everyone's pegged over here, and then they go, oh man, this is a crisis. No one gets them anymore.
Yeah.
Well, you got a bunch of people that legitimately got hurt or had a legit claim to them, and now no one can have them anymore. What the hell do you think is going to happen? You're going to go to the next best thing. Great, opioids, the next best thing is heroin. The worst thing ever created.
And then you punish them by imprisoning them once you got them hooked.
Yeah.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Vicious cycle.
And what runs that whole thing? Big pharma, baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's another thing that this virus has exposed is how bad our healthcare system is.
Yeah.
And that definitely needs to be addressed. And I hope that conversation comes back around to that, because that needs to be. It's mind blowing to me that we claim to be the country of freedom, and yet we're one of a very few countries in the world that don't have a universal healthcare system in place.
Yep.
That needs to change.
But yeah, no, and I agree. I mean, we pay an arm and a leg for insurance. You know, luckily my wife's got a great job and it helps. And yeah.
But not even necessarily just like insurance and stuff, like just general health, like learning a population that is educated on how to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a great point Joe Rogan brought up too. And it was in that podcast with those YouTubers. Now I can't remember their name. In this whole pandemic of this virus, not one person has ever talked about being healthy. So I got a text from my dad earlier. I'm type 2 diabetic. So I have an underlying health condition. So I'm at risk for this coronavirus to not only catch it, but to be very hard for me. Yeah. And I noticed it since I think I'm going on 4 years since I've been diagnosed with diabetes. And I notice it in cuts and scrapes and scratches, just getting the common cold. I don't heal or get rid of things like I used to. I mean, a common cold used to be 3 days. Now it's 7.
Wow. The
flu is monumental. Man, it would take me down for 2 weeks and those things. And, and so my dad sent the text earlier because he cares and he's my old man. But, he's like, man, these strains and these things and you're diabetic and it's 100 times worse for you than anybody else if you were to get it. But instead of holding up in my house and putting a hazmat suit on with an air tank and all those things, and I told him earlier, I'm as strong mentally and physically and as fit right now at 44 years old as I've ever been. And since this pandemic has started and this virus has started, I've probably pushed my fitness up to a different level, because the only thing I can do to balance that playing field of having an underlying condition is being as fit as physically fit as I can be. And like I told him, man, I don't want that virus, but if it comes, it comes. I'm as physically and mentally prepared as I can be, but no one else has discussed that.
No.
Not Fauci, not anyone. They're not going, hey man, you know what? Make sure you're outside getting your vitamin D. Make sure, it's Dr. Rhonda Patrick on the Joe Rogan. Yeah. That's what the one it was. But, go outside, walk, run, whatever you got to do. Be in the open air. If you're out jogging by yourself, you don't need to wear a freaking mask.
Yeah.
Actually need to breathe in all the pollen and all that crap that's out in the air. Even the pollution, all those things that causes your system to fight and be stronger. You need the sunlight. You need the fitness. You've got to have all that stuff.
Yeah.
But they're not talking about it. They're talking about what, pills you can take and this and vaccines and that, horse shit. I don't know. We've got an obesity problem. We've got a lazy problem. We got a fat problem.
Yeah. 100%, like Joe Rogan talked about, it's like we're so concerned about hurting people's feelings, but they're dying. So what's more important, hurting people's feelings or giving them the tools to be able to take care and fight this. You know,
Yeah.
this is real. This is a virus that attacks people who don't have strong immune systems. It may even attack people who have strong immune systems, which is really interesting. Moses has been talking to me about that this virus is really weird.
Yeah.
It could possibly be attacking even, so it makes strong immune system start producing too much bodies or whatever, which leads to what? Cancer.
Yep.
Anything too much, cancer, you know? So, I mean, there's just so many variables to it, but the main thing is that you got to learn how to take care of yourself and give yourself the best chance, you know, to be able to fight a virus or, you know, everything.
Heart condition. I mean, all of them. Just go for a freaking walk. Which I've got to say, man, in all of my adventures is, you know, especially since this thing started, I'm still walking, running. I haven't in about a week. It's been a really nice week off. I ate a shitload yesterday, man. I pigged out yesterday. It was fantastic. The amount of people, even when you're out driving in the neighborhoods that you see out there walking, the families all together out on their walk because, well, shit, there's nothing else to do. That stuff's been freaking fantastic to see.
Yeah.
But, you know, you can't do that and go eat 4 Big Macs. And I'm not bagging on Big Macs, dude. I do love a good Big Mac. I'm not.
Oh, man.
But, you know, we have those problems. But then, really, those problems boil down to basic economics also. Because I would love to, not that I would love to because I can and I do, but you go to Whole Foods right now, you go to the salad bar. Well, they don't have them, but when they have the salad bar and do those things, you make your salad, you grab, you know, a water or something to drink, you go up to the register, it's going to cost you $20. Almost goddamn guaranteed, because everything's by the pound. You're going to throw stuff in there, it's going to be heavy. Well, if you only have $20 and you've got a couple mouths to feed, you can go to Whole Foods and get 1 salad and 1 bottle of water. Or you can go to McDonald's. You can get 20 nuggets for $5 right now. All sodas are 99 cents. So you can get theoretically 15 nuggets and 4 sodas for around $20. That would feed your entire, if you had a husband, a wife, and 2 children, everyone's fed. They're going to bed with a full stomach that night.
It's a pretty simple decision there, unfortunately.
I'm a parent. I can tell you what I would do right now.
Yeah.
If I only had $20 and I had to feed my kids and I can get it, I can't even get a salad for each, but I can get a 20-piece chicken McNugget for each one of my kids for $5 a piece. And a soda, not a bottle of water. A bottle of water at freaking McDonald's will cost you $3.
Yeah.
But a fountain Coke will cost you $1. That's like 32 ounces of soda. You know, so we're running into, we've got economic problems that don't balance the scales either, you know, so.
And that's if you have that choice of going to Whole Foods. Here's what's crazy is that there's food deserts in America where literally there's communities where they don't even have a grocery store.
No.
There's fast food joints in their neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So have a choice to go to the grocery store and buy food.
Yeah, the nearest grocery store is an hour away.
Yeah. That's a real thing in America that blew my mind. I didn't realize that until, you know, I started seeing, you know, footage of that.
But they've got a Taco Bell, a McDonald's, a Wendy's, a Burger King, KFC. You know what I mean? They've got 5 fast food joints within a block of each other and no grocery store. And
again, so see, that comes back full circle to what we're talking about in this whole protest and stuff. Like, it's even bigger than race, in my opinion. It's a class warfare going on. It's where poverty is a huge issue in this country. And we need to address poverty because to me, the health of a nation is how they treat the weakest among them. The people who have the most against them. that is how we should judge the health of our nation, is how do we treat those people. And it's not about just giving them handouts. Like every time I say that, someone counters with about, you know, like, well, the welfare state doesn't work. I'm not saying welfare, I'm saying services to help people get jobs, services, make sure that communities have grocery stores, proper food, proper health care, all these things to build communities and make people feel safe in their own community, but also have a chance to be able to grow and to have a chance. You know, like you can't compare someone who grows up in Alamo having the same opportunities as someone who's growing up in East Oakland.
No.
You know?
Yeah, no, it's wildly different. But I just looked this up because you said the poverty thing. So HUD defined low income living limits or the poverty line in San Francisco in 2019 as $82,000 a year annual income for an individual.
That's poverty.
That's poverty line.
That's so crazy.
That's a shit ton of money. $82,000 a year. In San Francisco, you're considered poor. Because, you know, it's just insane. And I'm sure that obviously San Francisco is a high-end example, and that's going to vary drastically to East Oakland, to even to Santa Rosa, to Monterey, to all those things.
Yeah.
We have such a divide between classes is that there almost isn't a middle class anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
You've got high class and low class. If $82,000 a year for an individual makes me poor in San Francisco, then I mean that's just, you've got high class and low class.
I'm not even existent.
You haven't even you don't even make the census.
No.
No. I mean, but that's, you know, like you said, but in that case, how can you feel safe in your community? Or feel secure? I shouldn't even say safe. How can you feel secure in your community if you're working your absolute ass off to make $80,000 a year and you're still in the poor folks? Like you're still with the poor folks.
Yeah.
You can't. So then mentally, you're at a disadvantage. Because now you start to get into the mental aspect of it is, why am I trying so hard to be poor? Why is this single mother working 3 jobs and doing the, you know, all those things to still be way below that poverty line?
Yeah.
She can't afford to shop at Whole Foods. She can't, and she could probably, you know, barely afford. Have you seen the freaking cost of fruits and vegetables even at Safeway nowadays? It's asinine.
Yeah.
But I can go to the hot food bar and buy some friggin' fried chicken fingers or whatever those, you know, the chicken tenders for half the price as apples and bananas.
Feel nice and full.
Yeah. And it's warm food and you can feed everybody, and everybody, there's got to be nothing worse than going to bed on an empty stomach.
Yeah.
You know, so like you said, we have great divides in our line of classes: high class, middle class, you know, low class. I don't even think there's much of a middle class left anymore. I really don't.
Especially after this.
Especially after this.
Yeah.
Then these, you know, but then you have people that don't feel safe and secure in that, and what's it worth? Why am I doing this? You get into those conversations and people have lost already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that tangent, but as soon as you said that, I had to look that up because I remember hearing that study the other day.
But yeah, no, that's fine, man. I think that knowledge is important right now. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think we're living in history. You know, like everyone wants to, I feel like we're in a generation of people who are trying to find something to define this time. Well, we've got it. This year has shown.
I don't think it's done either.
No, it's not done. We've got our moment of definition, and we're gonna see what people are because of this. You know, like we're gonna see what values are important to this nation after this. We're going to see how resilient people can be because of this.
How resilient this nation can be.
And I hope for the best. You know, I hope that people are going to, you got to hope.
Of course.
Because I'm not one that's willing to just throw down my arms and say, you know, I give up. If I do that, then no one's going to hear from me. I'm going to be out in the mountains, you know.
Yeah.
But until
here's some next level thinking. I just thought of this right now. So you've heard of the Spanish flu of 1918, correct?
Yeah.
So I believe, and I'm not 100%, I'm not going to be 100% accurate in this because I don't know all of the details, but I believe that the Spanish flu of 1918 started. They did kind of a quarantine shelter in place model. It flattened the curve, I think, is as they say. And then I believe World War I started before there was what became the Spanish flu was completely eradicated or gone. And so in that, you had these mass gatherings of troops and people and things so that everyone can ship out. With those mass gatherings, you had a massive reinfection, and it became known as the Spanish flu of 1918. I think the premise is kind of correct.
Yeah, so it did start in the U.S. and it was, well, I can't say that they know it started in the U.S., but it was because of the mass deployment of troops.
That it really kind of like kicked up, right?
Yes. And so before that, they didn't know what it was. The interesting thing is why it got the Spanish flu. It was called Spanish flu because it didn't get recognized until it hit Spain.
Yeah.
Because of World War One, the troops got it in the trenches at the battlefields, and then they brought it back to Spain, and then that population got decimated in Spain, and they called it the Spanish flu because they were the first nation to report on it. But
okay, so now think of this: we have COVID-19. We went to shelter in place and and I truly believe that we flattened the curve. And I truly believe if we didn't make some of the moves that we did, that we wouldn't have flattened the curve.
Yeah.
But then when we're just getting ready, it's not gone. We still don't have a vaccine or a cure or anything for it. So it's still here. So we went from flattening the curve to mass protests, mass gatherings, mass everything, you know, all of these things. And we still don't know the ramifications of all of that.
Yeah.
No masks, no social distancing. No, I mean, you see videos of people screaming at people and spittle and everything is flying out of their face onto other people. It's going to be real interesting this next month or so to see what happens.
Yeah.
With known cases and these outbreaks.
Here's what's crazy is that.
But that's history repeating itself.
Yeah, it is. And here's what's crazy though, even if it doesn't spike, then that says something completely different. Like, what the fuck was this all about then?
Full of shit if it doesn't.
So it's like, I don't, like you said, this isn't over, and I think 2020 is going to go down as one of the craziest years in modern history for sure.
But I mean, this thing could turn into just as bad as that, and it could be, you know, COVID 2020, you know, or whatever the hell they call the coronavirus of 2020. It could be just because of those. What if this is as bad as they say it could have been, and we had flattened the curve, and then all of this stuff kicks off, and we have these protests that I'm not saying we didn't need or any of that. I don't need to get torched by everybody on that one, but you had these mass gatherings, thousands of people all in the same area together, and this thing could take off like a freaking wildfire.
Yeah, I mean, if it does that, I think who knows what happens after that. I don't know if we can overcome something like that at this point, you know.
Sure, shit can't have people sitting at home for another 3 months. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, what do they do at that point? Like, I don't think they're going to be able to get people to go into shelter in the place again. I think that was a one-off thing. So
Yeah, shutting other businesses down again and all that stuff. You're out of your freaking mind.
yeah.
You're out of your mind. Oh man, I listened to a great podcast the other day. Do you remember seeing the video of the cop from Seattle? He filmed it in his cruiser while he was in uniform, talking to other law enforcement officers. Like, hey man, you can't be arresting people for opening their businesses. He kind of stood up for everybody, and he was like,
Oh, I didn't see that.
so he got. I don't know if he's been officially fired yet. He was put on leave, everything, but he was on a podcast called the Cleared Hot podcast with a retired Navy SEAL named Andy Stumpf. And he talked about, I mean, but it was great. And they were saying, and his department said, you know, when it hit social media, and they're like, man, that's a great message, whatever, you got to take it down. Mm-hmm. He just said, no, I can't. They said, all right, then we're going to fire you.
Wow.
And he just said, I can't go against I posted it because I believe it.
Yeah.
You know, those things. I'm not taking it down. I'm not apologizing for it. I'm not taking it back, any of those things, but yeah, it was a 2-hour podcast. It was freaking great. It really was good. It's just someone standing there for what he believed in. An Army, retired Army Ranger, U.S. Marshal, now a cop up in Seattle. It's just, yeah.
Well, it's definitely interesting up in Seattle. You've seen that too, what they got going on. That
autonomous zone is
zone.
Yeah.
Physically no cops there.
Yeah, but then the freaking spoiled snowflakes, they try to make this stand, and they put out their shopping list the other day or yesterday to demand stuff they need. It's like, hey guys, you know what it means if you want to be in an autonomous zone? That means you're saying you don't want any outside help.
And take a look at Native American reservations across America. That's autonomous zones.
Yeah, it's just stupid. That's going to be broken up in a week or two, anyways.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
They got people.
It's crazy that the city allowed it.
The freaking mayor supports it.
Wow, that blew my mind.
So that I was like, you idiot. Even if you do, so stupid.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're willing to just hand the city over to people, I don't know what's going through their heads with that one.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't get it. I don't know. But now they have warlords running it, and they're strong arming businesses, and they're, it's like, it's no different.
Interesting times. That's what I keep saying.
Yeah, that's all you can say. It's good times.
Well, we could keep going, but shoot, man, I think we've gone almost 3 hours here. It's definitely the longest podcast I've done over Zoom.
Yeah, man, it's trippy world. I can't wait till we can do it live.
I know. I don't want to get used to this, but it's something that I'm willing to do, and just to be able to have these conversations. So I appreciate you taking the time tonight.
Man, thank you for having me on. It was fun. It was a nice way to break up the evening.
Yeah, right on. Really appreciate you as a human being, as family, and always enjoy our conversations. So
thank you, man. I appreciate it. Travel safe up to Oregon. Let's talk soon, huh?
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep in touch like always.
Always.
To everyone listening, I hope we didn't piss anyone off too much, but we're just trying to spread our thoughts and our knowledge, and hopefully you took something away from this. Thank you for tuning in. And then again, like always, to my patrons who help support this now, thank you for everything that you're doing to support this. I hope you enjoy these, and hopefully I get some of my patrons on here one of these days. Thanks, Franco, for coming on, and we'll see you all in the next one.
All right, cousin. I'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, take care.
Out.